Hi everyone, my name is Amber, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a book tag, which isn't really something I do often on this channel, mostly because I forget that tags are a thing. Today I'm going to be doing the Get to Know the Fantasy Reader tag, which I was tagged in by my friend Justine. I'm really excited to do this one because the questions are a little different to what I'm used to, and it also might be something that I can adapt for the thriller or horror genre if no one else has already, but I'll look into that in the future. I've written down the questions and answers on this book paper, but I can't really read what I've written. So this is going to be fun. The first question is, what was your fantasy origin story? How did you come to read your first fantasy novel? So I don't know how I came to read it. I imagine my mum or my nan bought me a book because they used to, or my nan definitely used to work in a care home, and they used to have kind of a book trolley come around, and they used to order books from the bookman, and she used to get a lot of my books from there. She got my Harry Potter box set and everything. I think the first fantasy book that I would have read is probably Meg and Mog, if that counts as fantasy. It's about a witch and her cat. If not, then I think it probably would have been the Magic Faraway Tree, which I remember loving as a child. I think there was also the Enchanted Wood or something. They were really good, and I think from there I would have gone on to the Chronicles of Narnia. I remember trying to read The Lord of the Rings when I was about 10 or 11. I kind of lost my library book, and then my mum didn't pay the fine for losing the book because she couldn't afford it, even though it was only like £8. She couldn't afford that. So then I never went back to the library until I was maybe 20, 21. Anyway, so I tried Lord of the Rings, didn't vibe with it I guess at 11, but by that point I was already into Harry Potter. So far we've got The Magic Faraway Tree, Narnia, Harry Potter, kind of the Lord of the Rings. I also wanted to give a shout out to Beyond the Deep Woods, which is actually an amazing book, an amazing series, and I'm looking forward to carrying on with that sometime in the near future, because honestly I loved it so much. The illustrations were also super creepy and really great. And then somewhere in there as well there was Northern Lights by Philip Pullman, the first book in his Dark Materials series, also called The Golden Compass. I'm sure you all know it. I read that at some point as well, but I only really skim read the other two books because I couldn't get into them. And then from what I remember, I think I took a massive break from reading fantasy. I created my blog and I think I was reading mainly YA paranormal, mostly probably thanks to Twilight and Cassandra Clare, so that was a whole thing. The first YA fantasy book I read in a long time was the Poison Study series by Maria V. Schneider, which I loved when I first started my book blog back in 2010. I also read Graceling, which was an instant favourite of mine, really enjoyed that one. And then I think mainly I focused on urban fantasy rather than, oh my notebook's falling down. I think I mainly focused on urban fantasy rather than epic fantasy for a while. So I read a lot of Rachel Vincent, Rochelle Mead. And then in terms of epic fantasy, I think in 2000 it's a nice cream truck. Are my videos ever going to go up without interruptions? Anyway, as I was saying, back in 2012 or 2013, I think I read The Eye of the World, the first book in the Wheel of Time series. Didn't love it. I think I gave it 4 stars at the time, would probably give it 3 now. It just wasn't that great in my opinion, although I do want to give the series another go now that I've read more epic fantasy. I also read the Game of Thrones series, A Song of Ice and Fire, and I've read The Final Empire, and I think The Final Empire is the book that really got me into adult epic fantasy, and it was the kind of the start of my journey from YA paranormal urban fantasy to adult epic fantasy. So that was a very long-winded answer, but I wanted to give you like my whole journey, and I'm thinking about doing a video on my reading journey, not just specifically for fantasy, because I read all sorts of genres from like as a baby to now, because I've gone through a lot. Question number 2 is, if you could be the heroine in a fantasy novel, who would be the author, and what's one trope you'd insist on being in the story? I say Chakraborty for the author and slow burn for the trope, like slow as fuck, the slowest burn possible. Question number 3 is, what is a fantasy book you've read this year that you want more people to read? I always want more people to read The City of Brass and The Poppy War. Those 2 trilogies are fantastic, A+. I don't know what other amazing fantasy books I've read this year. What have I read? All of my I don't know why I'm looking at my bookcase because all of my books are packed up right now. Those 2 have taken over my brain. I started reading The Mirror Empire, which is an underhyped book in my opinion. It was such a good book, but the world building it confused me a little bit, so I need to restart it because I need to be in the right headspace to read it. But that one was really good. The 5th season of course is fantastic, but people are kind of jumping on the hype train for that right now, and while I love that, please do jump on that train. I don't think it's one that's necessarily underhyped. Question number 4 is, what is your favourite subgenre? What have you not read much from? Okay, I think these are 2 different questions. Okay, so favourite subgenre, I would say epic fantasy, easily. I kind of like the time traveler kind of fantasy. I don't know if that's a specific type of subgenre, but you know, timey-wimey, parallel world fantasy, love it. Not necessarily portal fantasy, I wouldn't say. And I also love urban fantasy as well, even though that's more paranormal-esque. sometimes, but it's still great. I love a good adult urban fantasy. What have I not read much from? Okay, so I don't think I've read many swords and spells fantasy. Is that the right subgenre? I don't know. I'm just trying to think of Angela's tier ranking video where she ranked all of the different subgenres, and I don't really like King Arthur retellings all that much, so I don't think I've read many of those. I also haven't read much grimdark apart from Joe Abercrombie, and I guess the Poppy War, if that counts as grimdark. I think that's more military fantasy, which by the way I do really enjoy. I really like military fantasy and political fantasy. This is something that I've realised about myself this year. Question number 5 is, who is one of your auto-buy fantasy authors? So we've got S.A. Chakraborty, R.F. Kuang, Brandon Sanderson, V.E. Schwab, Cameron Hurley, because I adored The Light Brigade recently, and while I've only read part of their book called The Mirror Empire, I do want to read more. And I've also written down someone called MM, and I don't know who MM is. I feel so silly right now, but MM is someone who I said was my auto-buy author, and I don't know who it is. It'll probably come back to me. Someone called MM is also an auto-buy author. How do you typically find recs? Mostly from my friends, because I've got a lot of booktube and blogging friends on Twitter, booktube, on my blog. Not so much on Goodreads, but yeah, I've got friends all over the internet and we recommend each other books all the freaking time. Sometimes people will just text me and be like, Amber, this sounds like the book for you, read it, and I'll be like, yeah, okay. I find a lot of my, not necessarily recommendations, but new to me books by looking at the new release lists on Goodreads, and then I find something intriguing and I will add it to my list. I also find a lot from random TBRs and wrap-ups, which again aren't necessarily recommendations, but is where I find a lot of my books. I don't typically find recommendations from Instagram or Goodreads. Goodreads I only really go on to update my own reading, and Instagram I'm barely on anyway. I flick through sometimes to look at random photos, but I don't really take that as a recommendation. I just think it's a really pretty photo. Question number 7 is, what is an upcoming fantasy release that you're looking forward to? The Burning God, easily. It's my most anticipated new release for the rest of the year. Cannot wait to read it. Harper are still sitting on my wish on NetGalley, which is fine because they know that I'm going to be buying the book right away as soon as it's out. I honestly can't even think of any other books that are coming out towards the end of this year because I haven't been doing my new releases videos. I really need to get back into that because that's how I find a lot of my upcoming new releases. Question number 8 is, what is one misconception about fantasy you would like to lay to rest? Okay, I have 2. The first one being that only white males write fantasy books, because that is so untrue. There are so many women and so many authors of colour as well, but they're not promoted as much by the big 5 publishers. Book blogging and Booktube is doing a lot of the marketing work for the publishers in that regard, and they should be very grateful to us, because I don't think the genre would be where it's at now if it weren't for our marketing and for all of us hyping up these books and demanding more. And also, if you go on my Twitter feed, you'll see that no one's really reading the white male fantasy authors anymore. My second one is that fantasy is hard to read. This is obviously a personal thing. Some people find other genres harder to read than others, but I really think that you can't say that the whole genre as a whole is hard to read. I think you just need to find the right book for you. I think good starter books, for example, would be City of Brass if you're into YA fantasy and trying to make the jump to adult, because it's a very good kind of bridge book. Final Empire does the same thing by Brandon Sanderson. And I think if you're more into YA fantasy, then read some Sarah J Maas, because that might really get you into the mood for some, I don't know, more complicated stories, shall we say. I really do like Sarah J Maas, I'm not gonna lie. Her books are trash, but they're fun trash. Who is the most recent content creator you came across that you would like to shout out? I've got a couple. So there is Rowan from Rowan Reads, who is a new booktuber, and honestly she is lovely and I love her taste in books. We're buddy reading Fury Born together, and also The Rage of Dragons in August. Aaron, whose channel I think is called Books and Busy, or Busy and Booked, something like that. She's got such a calming personality and it's really nice to watch her. And also Tammy, whose channel, again, I can't freaking remember because I don't write these things down, but Tammy's videos are always lots of fun. She has a cat in her vlogs and she reads a lot of adult fantasy. So I think that's it for the tag. I think there were only 10 questions, at least I only wrote 10 down. So thank you so much for watching this video. I'm not going to tag anyone because this is quite an old tag now. It's been around for about 6 months, if not more. So I don't know who's already done it. But if you haven't already done it, if you're a newer booktuber and you want to do it, then definitely give it a go. Thank you for watching and I'll be back soon with another video. Bye!